Alright guys, so we're gonna start off with our first layer is gonna be the sky. So we're gonna use some blue, and I'm gonna make sure I go all the way around. I am using a canvas. This is a 16 by 20. So I'm gonna make sure I flip this on its side and get the edges really well. This is just a preference. You don't really have to do it, but when you hang these up, if you don't use a frame, you're gonna see the white of the canvas, the negative space on the side. So I usually like to cover that up. I'm gonna use some light blue, and this is just gonna help in the transitional effect. So now we have some light blue transitioning into a dark color. All right, just gonna do that a couple of times, back and forth. Now I'm gonna use some pink, and I'm gonna transition the pink into the light blue. So we already have a couple of transitional layers here. You have your pink transitioning into a light blue, which then transitions into a dark blue. So this is gonna be maybe a twilight scenery. Now I'm thinking I'm gonna create the mountain range right about here. And the way we do that, using our handy dandy soft tip Spraycasso tool and some black. Just gonna tap on here and just gonna create the outline first. Just like that, and then you start filling it in. So this is going to be a silhouette layer of a mountain. Just going to create some nice little Rocky Mountains here. Now that I'm living in Colorado, I get to see the Rocky Mountains very often, and I just simply love the outline of them. Very simple. So you just start smearing the paint downward. Just like that. Alright, now let's take a closer look at that. Now, this is a mixture of orange, pink, and black. Orange and black alone create a dark brown color. So you can use some brown if you have it. I like to do the combination because it gives you more of a unique color to it. We're blending that into the background. Now the black layering has already given us the outline of where the mountains is located and more or less where the rocky edges are at. Now adding the oranges give us a really nice mid-tone layer. So it's not quite highlights, but you're still able to see some of the color, some of the lighter areas. And as we proceed, when we start adding our highlights to this, it'll start giving the mountain a little bit more perception and more depth. Okay, so we added some highlights, we added some lighter colors. As you can tell, it's basically the same orange, just with a touch of white to it. And I just followed the contour of the mountains. Here I'm adding our light blue, and this will give us the effect of a vanishing point in the background. Just going to do this a couple of times and just kind of blend that into our negative space in the background. This is some pink. I'm just trying to reflect some of the colors that we have on our sky. Remember, rule of thumb, what colors you have above, you want to have below. It just brings a lot of balance to your painting if you do it in this manner. Now using a little bit of a sea sponge, and I say a little bit because I like to tear these up in small portions, I'm going to create a distant piece of land here in the background by adding a bunch of little pine trees. I'm just going to put these little guys right here in the background. Happy little trees, right? We're going to add some here to the left side of our painting. Now, all I'm doing is I start off like pyramids, right? You start from the top of the pine trees and work your way down. Using the soft tip Spraycasso tool, using the same technique that we added to create the mountain with a dark color, in this case it's black, I'm just adding some terrain right here on the bottom of these pine trees. They have to have somewhere to stand. So we're just adding our terrain. And it's very simple. You're smearing the paint, add a little bit of black, and use your tool. And just like what we created, our mountains, you create a silhouette layer, a terrain silhouette layer. Now this is going to be closer to us. So I'm just going to smear this here on the side. Perhaps this is a rock. Just going to add here. And notice how the river itself, or lake, or body of water is starting to take shape. It already has a lot of curves. You can see the river coming from the background down. We're going to add some more terrain here. And it's very easy to do. You can do this with the magazine sheet if you don't have a soft tip Spraycasso tool. But I tell you what, that handle makes the difference. It allows you to manipulate the paint a little better. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I like to add grass strands that go into the water. It always feels more realistic to me rather than just stopping at a flat linear point. I like to bring it into the water. Now notice how I'm smearing some of the paint on the edges too. This is a neat effect that'll give you a reflection. I definitely encourage you to practice with this. Using a little bit of that sea sponge, I'm going to create a pine tree here on the background. Now you kind of want to work it like a pyramid. You start off at the very tip, the very point, and then you start working your way down. You want to make it look like a little cone. Okay. Now we also have some trees here on the left side. And here I'm going to create a bit of a mist effect. This is using our light blue and a straight edge. I'm just going to add a little bit of this mist in the background. And this is really going to separate our background layers with the layers that we have in front of us. So very much like the mountains, you see how the mountains kind of vanish into the background. You want that to reflect on your trees as well, as this is what makes the vanishing point. All right. Now then, let's work on these layers that are going to be closer to us. You want to overlap the mist in the background. How do you do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. You add some layers on top of that. And you don't want to completely cover the background layer, but you do want to make sure that you show the layer that you're adding now, how it overlaps the layer in the background. Remember, one of the things that I always encourage you guys to do is to don't leave things as a complete straight line. Break them up a little bit. And this is a really good way of doing that. Okay. Using the grass technique, you can create the effect of distant pine trees in the background. So what you do is you tap and you smear upwards. I'm just going to add a little bit of clear coat to keep some of this layers moist. And using our spray painting brush, I'm just going to add a little bit of white into the areas where the water connects with the land. This is going to give us a nice little separation between the two layers. And if you blend it just right, it'll give you the effect of a reflection. Now I'm going to use a number 10 spray paint brush here on the edges just to kind of blend it in a little better. And we're just going to get right in there, make that separation very noticeable. And notice how I'm doing this. I'm just blending it into the water as well. And this will give you the effect of water ripples. Okay, now using the soft tip Spraycasso tool, I tapped it into some white, very light And I'm going to create some of these water ripples. Back and forth, back and forth. You can use a little bit of clear coat to keep the water layer moist. And if you want, you can even use your finger to create the effect of the water movement. All right, a little more clear coat. Now, this is a question I get asked a lot. Do you use gloves when doing this? I recommend you do. I recommend you do. For me, I didn't have any gloves at the time. And so do as I say and not as I do, guys. Get some latex gloves if you have to and do this. Remember that your body will absorb the spray paint, and this is chemicals that you don't want to be absorbing. So with that being said, guys, remember to always wear your mask as well, which is why I do these voiceovers, because I'm wearing a mask when I do my spray painting. So I'm just adding some clear coat and creating the water movement. Now here I tapped into a little bit of pink just to give more reflection to the water. I want some of the colors in the sky to reflect. Notice how you do this? I just blend it in with the colors that already exist. Quick movements, back and forth. And you want to do this all the way down to the bottom. Remember, you don't want to stop just halfway through, because you'll be able to tell that the painting is not quite complete until you do it all the way to the bottom. And I recommend you do this at the same time. You don't want to stop, work on another layer, and then come back. You want to be able to do it all the way through, and then add your layers on top of the water. It'll just look better. Now I'm adding another layer. This is going to be a silhouette layer of a terrain, and I'm just going to add it right here. Notice I'm not adding a whole lot of detail. I just added the edge. Tap, 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 and smearing it downwards. Okay, now check this little trick out. Once you have the edge completed, you can always come back in here and just kind of fill in the dark spots or the empty spots with your black. All the way around. Now remember, this is a canvas, so I'm trying to get the edges here. Using my straight edge, I went ahead and I added a little bit of that light blue mist in the background. And notice how this is coming together. It does require a few layers, but like anything, guys, the more layers you add and work with and keep constant of your light sources, you'll be able to create some pretty amazing pieces of work. You guys remember the star technique? Very beginner level. You point your cam 45-degree angle away from your painting and gently squeeze the top until the white starts to sputter. This is something that I wasn't going to do in this painting. Otherwise, it would have been done first before adding the mountains. Now, I've gotten a little bit better over the years where I can more or less help control where the sputters is going to land. This is something I wasn't going to use on this painting. Otherwise, I would have done it at the very beginning when we were working on our sky layer. Otherwise, you're going to have to be very patient if you get some of those stars that land on your mountains. So if you're going to add stars, try and do this at the very beginning of your painting. Here I'm practicing. Now, make sure you practice this quite a bit, guys. I'm practicing where the moon is going to go. And make sure that it's nice and round. Bam. There you go. Make sure, notice how I practice first offside my painting. Sometimes if the can is a little clogged up, it'll give you a sputter effect. Sometimes it won't be completely circular. So make sure you do this off your painting before doing it onto your painting. All right, I'm gonna add a little bit of white here using our spray painting brush. We're gonna add the same effect that we added above. We're just gonna add a little bit of white here on the bottom, right where our terrain meets the water. See those ripples? See how the white breaks where the land ends and the water begins? And at the same time, if you do it just right, you can see the little water ripples. It'll give you a nice little reflection around the edges. You can also do this with light blue. And now here I'm just working on the plant life. I'm adding another layer of grass strands right here, overlapping some of those previous added layers. Using the light blue, I'm going to create a mist layer, and then using some black and the soft tip Spraycasso tool, I am going to overlap that layer. I want to break it up a little bit, and I want to give the illusion that it is off in the background, so this layer is closer to us. Okay. Now let's add some of that grass. I'm adding some color, so to line up a little bit, this is forest green. So I do want some areas to be darker than others. So in those areas, I'm going to use the darker green to create the effect of grass. Notice I added some white too. As I want the grass to get certain highlights, I get closer to the white. Yeah, just like that. We're just going to add a few little highlights here. Drop the sea sponge. This tends to happen sometimes since I use little pieces of it. Now, I've always said that it's the details that can make or break your painting. And this is what I mean by that. You know, sometimes it gets a little tedious where you sit here and you start adding just the right amount of greens, the right amount of highlights, and it may make your painting take a little bit longer than it would if you're out there spray painting live. Okay, so we're just gonna add a few little highlights here, and this is done by using some light blue. And I'm starting to just add some definition to some of these rocks that we added earlier. And we do that as soon as notice how I do this. As soon as I add the highlight, I blend it into the color in the background. And this tool is very easy to use, very easy to manipulate paints with. It's made out of rubber. It's easily cleaned. For more information on this tool, go visit the website. There's similar tools out there, so you shouldn't have an issue finding something like this. Let's take a close-up at the details. Here I add my highlights, and I start to blend them in. Notice how the ground starts to take shape as well. Alright. Using the sea sponge, here I'm just adding some more dark greens. Tap into some white, mix it a little bit more, and we can add some highlights. We can add some flowers. This is a sea sponge with a little bit of pink onto it. Now, you don't want to overwhelm just one area with pink, so you have to keep a balance. And notice how I kind of go throughout the painting. I don't just concentrate on one area. This is a mistake I've seen a lot of people do, where they start off in one area and they want to complete that one area before moving to the other parts of the painting. Well, it becomes very obvious that this area is going to stand out a little bit more than the rest of the painting. So you want to kind of start on one area, on one section of the painting, and then work your way throughout. Now here the painting has dried a little bit more, and I wanted to do something different, so I'm using a Sharpie. And guys, this is the most important part of the painting. It is your signature. So Spraycasso 2016. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's tutorial. It was definitely a lot of fun making it. And as always, crew, stay safe, be creative, and until next time, keep those cans shaking.